Foreign Affairs. It's something we started in the 115th Congress, and I want to express my gratitude to Project 2049. I think it's so important of what you do, the awareness that you bring out, to show what's going on with Taiwan and other parts of the Asia Pacific. And I appreciate you inviting me here today. You know, the geopolitical landscape has changed. I'm going to put this under here. The geopolitical landscape has changed. We're going through a tectonic shift in world powers we haven't seen since World War II. And, you know, everybody's trying to rebalance and jockey their position as far as world powers. We've historically had it since World War II. And with what's changing in the world, the different conflicts, the different politics, you know, there's a populist movement, not just in our nation, but around the world. We see aggression of other countries. You see the terrorists going on. So everything is kind of shifting, which leads to the refugee crisis that we have around the world. There's between 65 and 80 million refugees displaced around the world. Again, it's one of the largest numbers, and we haven't seen numbers like this since World War II. And then we see China's growing presence, aggression, coercion, and intimidation with other countries. And it's important to be clear about China's January 4th declaration of M503 flight path. It's a unilateral change of the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. And yet another example of China's territorial aggression in the near waters. Even though the agreement between Taiwan and China about the flight paths were supposed to be a multilateral agreement between the two countries, bilateral agreement between the two countries when they were implemented. And that hasn't happened. And as you were speaking, young lady, when I came in, where do we go from here, or what's next? I think the writing is on the wall. When you see the attitude of China, the things that they have done, the things that they have said and not lived up to, and we can give a couple examples of that, and I will, you can see where they're going. There's an old proverb that says, if you want to see one's past, look at their present situation. If you want to see one's future, look at their present activity, their habits, the things they're doing, and that dictates where they're going to be in the future. And I'll explain more of that as we go further. Yet, this episode is further evidence of China's disregard for bilateral agreements, its subversion of international norms, and of Taiwan's diminished voice in international organizations that it rightfully deserves to participate. In particular, embarrassing and transparent display of bias, the Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization visited Beijing, and they're a pro-Beijing individual a few weeks after China took its proactive action, but didn't even mention the dispute despite its implications for civil aviation safety. And I think this is just another egregious insult of China's aggression. We talk about one country, two systems, and I think it's very evident it's one country, one system is what you're going to see in the future. China talks about one belt, one road, and it's one way, and it goes to China. China must stop its territorial aggression throughout Asia, throughout the Asia-Pacific region before it reaches a level that is intolerable to the other powers in the region, including United States interests and our allies. And it's one of those things that we see repeated over and over again in the world. When something starts happening, we can ignore it, hoping it'll go away, hoping it'll resolve on itself. But in this situation, it's one of those things that won't. And if we don't stand up, not just we, the United States, but we as other nations to follow international norms, international law, the code of laws, the code of conduct, if we don't stop and stand up now, it'll be that much harder in the future. It'll be that much more difficult, more costly, and I think more dangerous to Taiwan. Unfortunately, this action indicates that Xi does not plan to do so, especially if it's a prelude to the declaration of the ADIZ, or territorial sea around Taiwan. During a state visit in 2015, Xi Jinping lied to President Obama at the time and the world when he said that China would not militarize the South China Sea. And I had a very interesting meeting with the ambassador of China, and we talked about the South China Sea and the Spratly Islands. about what was going on, and we were assured at that time by the ambassador it was for peaceful navigational purposes. But I reminded him that our satellites show a 10,000-foot runway that can accommodate military jets. Our satellites demarked military barracks. They showed both offensive and defensive weapons, military satellites, and yes, to appease him, there was a lighthouse for peaceful navigational purposes, and we talked, and I just found it very disingenuous. They say this, but we see this. And again, if you want to see one's future plans, look at their present activity. Look at their present habits that they are doing, and that dictates where they're going. During his state of the visit, when he lied to President Obama about not militarizing the South China Sea, he is gravely mistaken if he thinks any U.S. policymaker will take him at his word again. Credibility is a big thing that we've seen that has favored the United States. You know, I talked to the ASEAN nations and I asked them why it was so successful. And they said, because of the presence of the United States for the last 40 years, you brought rule of law, you brought order to that organization in the beginning, that they have grown, you know, and following that on their own for the most part. And when it comes to altruism, she simply has no credibility when it comes to the altruism of China's regional security objectives. Our commitment to the, and we can see this with the 20-year commitment to Hong Kong, the transfer, when they transferred from Great Britain to China. There was supposed to be a 50-year agreement, and we're 20 years into it, and we see what's not working in the over-aggressiveness of China, or the disregards for the control of the South China Sea, when the Court of Arbitration said that they had no claim to the South China Sea, yet they moved ahead anyways, and the world community stood idle. And that's what a warning I think we need to all be committed to with Taiwan. She is committed to replacing the existing global order with one that is more to his liking. And that's why I like to, when I hear one belt, one road, I like to think it's one way. You know, to have world order, especially in the 21st century, with the population we have around the world, and it's growing, with the type of weapons that countries have now, we need to have world order. I'm 60, I'll be 63 years old in April. I've seen enough conflicts for you young fellows out here in my lifetime. And we need to change direction. He's not even shy about it in his work report at the 19th Party Congress. She said that the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics is now flying high and proud for all to see, offering a new option for other countries and nations. He stated that the basis for China's international relations would continue to be the so-called 5 principles for peace coexistence, which are a recipe for regional hegemonies, if not the world, and said that no one should expect us, China, to swallow anything that undermines our interests. He also stated, and I found this very interesting because we were in Hong Kong at the time this was going on, he also stated that the era of China has arrived, and for China's time has come to take the center stage on the world platform. I think era, E-R-A, the time of China has come, but I think it's the error of what he was saying, because I took that offensively and very inflammatory and threatening to America. You know, we are the lone superpower of the world. And it's one of those things that we're willing to share the world stage, but to talk like you're going to supplant the United States of America, I think that's a very threatening gesture, and we made sure that that got taken back to Beijing. I don't want to be arrogant and say we're the lone superpower and we'll always be that. I'm smart enough to realize that the world is changing, and that we as a world community, with the people that are the leaders of countries that value human enterprise, human rights, we will be willing to share that stage with other countries, but not through threatening, innuendos, coercion, intimidation. That'll never work. We have to honor the rule of law. Fortunately, the United States has not been bashful in our response. we made sure that that was transmitted from Hong Kong to Beijing. In just the last few months, the Trump administration has released their national security strategy and national defense strategy, and on Monday, a Defense Department budget, all of which are focused in the reemergence of long-term strategic competition and the revisionist powers. You know, the last administration had the idea of strategic patience. I'm a veterinarian by trade, and what I thought of strategic patience is what we called in veterinary medicine was benign neglect, meaning that if you have a disease in your dog that's not like threatening like a cold or something, it's self-eliminating and it'll go away by itself. But what we see going on in the world, especially with China and their policies, is not something that strategic patience will deal with, because the problem will get worse. The national security strategy observes that China and Russia want to shape a world antithetical to U.S. values and interests. China seeks to displace the United States in the Indo-Pacific region, expand the reaches of its state-driven economic model, and reorder the region in its favor. We expect the Defense Department to release a new strategy soon, a document for the Indo-Pacific soon, which will shed more light on the administration's plan to meet these challenges. Congress has a role to play in this new national security vision, and on my subcommittee, this means meeting China's challenges. To meet this challenge, we must defend the prevailing order and the partnership that has served us so well. The preservation of the U.S.-Taiwan relations will be a central part of these efforts. Congress, and you quote this, will never allow Taiwan to be used as a bargaining chip in some grand geopolitical arrangement, and will continue to take the lead, as it has since the passage of the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. In his 19th Party Congress speech, Xi Jinping announced his intention to accomplish reunification with Taiwan under a one-country, two-system model. Again, all we have to look is how are they treating Hong Kong and the encroachment of the power of China. Over the last few years, the example of Hong Kong has shown us the true meaning of this term, that Beijing has the final say, even when autonomy is brokered internationally. Xi is playing for keeps, and the stakes are high. To avert this outcome, we must defend Taiwan's international presence and our bilateral ties. China's declaration of the M503 flight path is just one part of a full court press against Taiwan, encompassing every aspect of its domestic security and international engagement. Beijing has stepped up military pressure and provocative flights around Taiwan, but they've also done it to other areas in the area. If you look at what they've done with Japan, increased efforts to infiltrate Taiwan's media and political life, driven Taiwan out of even the most innocuous international organizations, and stolen or purchased its diplomatic partners. You know, being a veterinarian, I'm attuned to the health communities and research and development. When I saw Taiwan was pretty much ordered out of the World Health Assembly, the meeting in Australia when that happened, and it was because China didn't want them recognized as an independent organization or entity. And you think of the amount of work that Taiwan has contributed to the medical world, I think this is detrimental to people everywhere. My immediate goal in this area is to urge that the Senate to move my legislation we've worked hard on. We've got our committee people here, Brian and Hunter, that have worked tirelessly on this to move that legislation promoting Taiwan's observer status in the World Health Organization. The bill passed the House in January, and it's critical that it becomes law before the World Health Assembly in May, and that's our goal, so that they can be recognized. China was successful in ejecting Taiwan, as I said, from last year's summit, despite, again, their enormous contribution to the global health. Things like SARS. You know, these viruses don't know any borders. They don't know any political system. And so if we've got people that are willing and very efficient to help, you know, mankind, it's just a selfish and insecure move that leaves the world at increased risk of infectious disease, which knows no borders. And that's why I feel very confident that in the long term, the countries like Taiwan, people that we partner with, people that we become allies with, they'll succeed because the system that we believe in empowers the people. We empower the people, and when you have empowered people, they're the ones that make a difference. When you listen to the new organization that was started under the Communist Party, what's the name of that group, Hunter? Do you remember? The one, the United Front. I was reading one of their communications, and it said that the role of the people is to serve the government of China. And when you think of that in America, that just doesn't work. Government's here to protect the God-given rights that we have. I'm almost done, if I'm okay. Am I all right on time? We'll also continue to engage U.S. administration to prioritize Taiwan. I'm concerned that over the years, the executive branch has institutionalized the norm of avoiding displeasing Beijing. This can be seen at the working level in the dysfunction of arms sales package and the sad decision to purge Taiwan's flag from all U.S. government websites in the last few months. And that again was the last administration. I find that personally offensive, and our goal is to make sure that's reinstated. We'll turn our power to protecting the U.S.-Taiwan relationships. We will not waver in Taiwan's autonomy and hold the administration accountable as much as we can to do the same. And in closing, looking further ahead as the chairman of the Asia Pacific Subcommittee, I'll also be working to support alternative methods of engagement with Taiwan with the global cooperation and training framework to Taiwan's potential participation in our red flag military exercises. We're looking at FTAs with Taiwan. We will convey to the administration that a cabinet level official must attend the opening of the new AIT facility in Taipei this summer, and will help hold the line among Taiwan's remaining diplomatic allies, especially as the Vatican pursues an ill-considered bargain with the authoritarians in Beijing. And as we move forward with these efforts, I'm grateful that events like this and your awareness that you bring to the rest of the world of what really is going on, one bring much needed attention to these issues. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for allowing me to stop by. All right. Thank you all. You betcha.
With that, I think we've concluded our program. Thank you very much for taking the time out to attend. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our staff. Hope to see you If I can maybe give everybody the room is on schedule to be used at 4 o'clock, so yeah, we can take our conversations outside for staff.